Living during medieval times meant food and drink were an important part of everyday living for all social classes. However, unlike peasants during a harsh winter season, rich and noble families enjoyed good food and drink to outlast the ravages of cold and chill outdoors. Though what did these privileged households serve to survive a brutal medieval winter? Rich and noble families' foods for a medieval winter. There were a relatively small number of rich households in medieval times. During the winter season, they consumed fresh, preserved, and stored foods that were often spiced with various flavors. Multiple courses were served at most meals. As a staple for every meal, wealthy households served baked bread. These loaves were made with expensive enriched wheat flour to appear white. One may ask where they found these grains during a brutally cold winter. The answer to that question is that these households stored their autumn harvest. Grains, cereals, and legumes would be dried and sorted, then stored in clay or ceramic pots. During winter, dried legumes would be soaked in water overnight, then boiled in the morning to soften their texture before consumption. When it came to meat, noble households ate domesticated animals raised on their large estates such as pork, mutton, beef, lamb, or goose. Meats such as chicken and pork would be spiced and presented in different ways to make unique meals. They would be covered in butter and saffron to make an appetizing golden color when served. These meats would often be stuffed with spice fillings. Expensive imported spices like cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon, and pepper would also flavor these meat offerings. Sauces thickened with breadcrumbs were added to many dishes, containing ingredients like wine, herbs, and spices. These expensive spices came from trade with countries far from the grounds of these estates. When fresh meat was not available, preserved meat would be consumed. Smoked and dried meats like beef, ham, and bacon could last quite a while over the winter season. This meat would also be used for various pies and fillings during winter. Chases or hunts for noblemen on their large estates were fashionable and supplied freshly killed game. These meats included wild boar, venison, partridge, pheasants, and hares. Boar's head would often be served in thick slices with boar's brawn. Brawn was considered a choice cut of meat in medieval times. It was rich, fatty, and dark in texture. Birds such as quails, woodcocks, and cranes were also roasted and prepared. If available, fresh fish such as trout and salmon caught from rivers, streams, and stocked ponds on their lands were also consumed. Otherwise, preserved fish such as herring from smoking, salting, pickling, or drying during the autumn season would be used. Fish was very important to eat during the church fasting days, when meat and dairy could not be consumed. When nourishment needs could not be provided from the bounty of their estates, squires of the kitchen chose and purchased the food required. Here, it should be noted that the variety of food available depended on where one lived, even for noble families. Experienced cooks prepared all of the food, with wealthy medieval households usually having more than one. Surprisingly, a dish appreciated by both noble families and peasants alike was called pottage, though for the rich it was called mortrue, a mix of meats and other ingredients which were cooked together. It included expensive spices like cinnamon and often sugar, unlike the peasant version. White meats, the term often used for dairy products, would be provided by chickens, cows, and goats. Protein came from eggs, dairy, and cheese. Interestingly, since eggs were a prized commodity, chickens in medieval times were not slaughtered for their meat unless necessary. Root vegetables like leeks, parsnips, and turnips from estate gardens were especially important because of their long shelf life when stored in cool cellars. These preserved vegetables were packed in sand or dirt for further protection. Stored vegetables like cabbage and beans were also consumed. Imported items like almonds, figs, and dates were also used for consumption. Similar to peasants, all fruit and vegetables were cooked, since it was believed if eaten raw, they could cause illness. Foraged domestic nuts like chestnuts and walnuts would also be consumed during winter. Even wild garlic would be foraged for winter meals. Fruits such as apples, pears, and berries that were dried, stored, or sealed in honey for winter consumption during the fall season would also be used. Spices were so important to the medieval upper classes that some had special areas devoted to them called a spicery in the kitchen. Salt was expensive and used accordingly. Expensive sugar would also be consumed in various sweetened meals. Desserts for the upper classes during winter consisted of pastries, nuts, custards, tarts, and exotic candied fruits like oranges, dates, almonds, and figs. Mince pies were another winter dessert available in wealthy medieval English households. Small and rectangular in shape, they were flavored with spices such as cloves, cinnamon, and nutmeg to represent the gifts of the three wise men. Medieval English plum pottages consisted of flour, eggs, milk, butter, suet, breadcrumbs, treacle, and dried fruit. Its consistency was more like a pottage and was often served near the beginning of meals during medieval winter. Medicinal herbs were also prepared for the threat of illness during winter. Hyssop, a plant which was harvested in fall for medicinal purposes, was used to treat phlegm, bronchitis, coughing, and similar conditions. Rich and noble families' drinks for a medieval winter. Fermented drinks were perceived at the time to have nutritional value and medicinal benefits, especially when spices were added. They were also used as a warm comfort to ward off the chills of winter and damp. Wine was the alcoholic drink of choice for medieval English royal and noble households. Expensive spices, along with sugar or honey, would often be added to red wine for distinct flavoring. Wine was an elite choice of drink in medieval England, especially red wine. Nobility and upper classes imported wine to impress their guests with its quality and their abundance. Red wine would often be purchased from Bordeaux and Gascony, while Rhenish white wines such as Rieslings were imported from Germany. Hippocras was a popular mulled spiced wine enjoyed by the wealthy during the winter season. Expensive spices added to this mixture would include cinnamon, ginger, and cloves, as well as sugar and honey for taste. Ale was consumed by all social classes, though in lesser quantities for wealthy families compared to the lower classes. Medieval ale was less bitter and sweeter than modern beer because there were no hops. Due to questionable water sources for many at the time, ale was a preferred option for drinking, especially in large towns and cities. Wealthy families enjoyed higher quality darker ale with a stronger alcoholic content. Buttered beer, a warm dark winter ale created with spices like cinnamon, egg yolk, and sugar, was drunk by wealthy medieval English households at wintertime. Posset was another winter drink made from hot ale or wine to which milk and spices like nutmeg were added along with sugar. It was often consumed as a remedy for cold and flu sickness. Coddles and possets were also enjoyed by wealthy households during the winter season. These were rather thick, heated beverages made with ale or wine to which was added milk or cream and spices like ginger, breadcrumbs, and eggs. Like all warm drinks, it was practical, providing comfort and warmth during the cold winter. Cider was another preferred winter alcoholic drink. Where there were an abundant supply of preserved pears, Perry cider was also made and consumed. Wassail, which means in good health, was a popular beverage during winter. It consisted of a hot mulled cider or ale with spices like cinnamon or nutmeg added to it. Mead was a medieval drink consumed by all classes in winter, though not as often as ale and cider. It was a honey-based drink usually fermented with wild yeast and mixed with water. Mead could be made with various flavors and alcoholic content. Wealthy families sometimes added herbs for more flavor or mulled their mead. Thank you for supporting us at Medieval to Modern. Be sure to watch our next episode or any other fascinating video or playlist from our Medieval to Modern channel. Also, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, click the notification bell, and share this channel so we can create more exciting content. I wish you good tidings as we remember that sharing knowledge has been a noble deed throughout the ages.